I'd like to introduce our next speaker. His name is Sia Kwinana. He's going to take us through introduction to the cloud and AWS best practices. Please, let's give him a round of applause.
Excited to be here, by the way. My name is Siagudumisa Kwinana. Thank you. My name is Siagudumisa Kwinana. You can call me Sia. I'm a solutions architect based off in Johannesburg, South Africa. I am one of the founders and co-organizers for AWS for Africa, which is the event that we're having here today. I must say, one of the key objectives that we were trying to achieve with AWS for Africa, I can already foresee happening here today. What we were doing with my team is we wanted to actually make use of the offerings that are available on AWS, the technology that's available, the services that are available. How can we have those in your hands? How can we give you the tools to build, as what Dr. Werner mentioned, right? How can we give you the platform and the infrastructure to unlock that innovation? And so the key thing we actually want to do is, I know we all have very bright ideas, very smart strategies that we're trying to implement in our organizations. And my goal with my team is to help you with the exposure of some of the services and capabilities that are available on AWS. And so that's what you will figure out in today's agenda, is that we're showcasing to you what's possible, we're showcasing the services that are available, and we're showcasing how you can go about to unlock innovation in the cloud. So I just want to quickly, quote some of the few things that Dr. Werner mentioned on how you can go about to decompose your systems, how you can go about to build tenable systems, establish controls, continuously optimize, build evolving systems, and also experiment. So in my session today, I will be basically giving you an introduction to AWS, and also showcase to you the capabilities that we have that you can actually make use of, where you can be able to experiment, and be able to build these tenable systems, right? I think Dr. Werner did a very nice approach when it comes to optimizing your costs. So today I want to showcase to you how you can use the technology and then be able to kickstart that optimization tasks, and most importantly, also bring some ideas that you can bring to the market, have a go-to strategy within Rwanda. All right. So I saw earlier on Winnie was asking, how many of you here in the room actually know what AWS stands for? I think let me just take a step back and also accommodate everyone who's here today. So AWS, I'd like for us to look at AWS as basically an on-demand delivery of IT resources in the cloud, right? Using a pay-as-you-go method. So what do I mean about this? Well, you can be able to deploy compute resources, can be able to deploy databases, and also all the way to machine learning, and most importantly, generative AI applications. All of this can be done within a click of a button within the AWS environment. And then you can be able to spin up resources to quickly experiment, and you can be able to turn them down as you need them, right? So look at AWS like that. So what does that mean for you to hear today, right? What are some of the benefits that you get? I think cost, one thing I just want to make mention of around cost is the methods that we have on AWS when it comes to how you pay for the resources. Mostly you pay for the time on which your resources are running. And so that's already giving you an idea that if you want to build tenable systems, you can have mechanisms in place where you can implement some sort of a shutdown strategy. We can even have tools that you can implement on AWS that will do that automatically for you. And now another very important one is around elasticity and agility. Now, when we have these ideas, when we have these prototypes, how can we go about to trial them out? So as I mentioned earlier on, we have the infrastructure, and in just a matter of a click of a button, you can be able to spin up these resources. You can scale them up, you can scale them down as you need them. And again, if it happens that this project is not going the right way as you need it, you can be able to shut down that environment in just a click of a button. Another very important one is around security. The infrastructure on AWS is built to basically run all types of government systems, financial systems, any type of organization that has very stringent security requirements. We do have infrastructure that can help you to accommodate those. In fact, even today, we have a session solely dedicated around security. And that's how much we actually take security very serious on AWS. So what sets us apart, right? I know it's actually a lot of information that's in this slide, but I just want to make mention of 3 items that are available here. One, it's around the breadth and the depth of the services that we have. We have over 200 plus services that are available on AWS, which could all be tailor-made for different use cases. And I'll walk you through actually as I proceed with the slides on how you can navigate that offering. Now, another very important one is around machine learning. In fact, more machine learning happens on AWS more than anywhere else, right? We have compute resources that can be able to allow you to build models from the ground up. Very earlier on, Dr. Venner showed some of the models that were created by one of the organizations in Kenya, I think. That's capability that's available to you as well. If you want to build models from the ground up, we do have resources that can assist you in this space. Similar to having to run generative AI workloads, we do have services that are tailor-made to make that easy for you. And then the last one is around our ecosystem. So we have about 100,000 plus APNs. So these are referred to Amazon Partner Networks. So you'll notice today we have 2 AWS partners who will be presenting. Now, AWS partners are basically organizations that have been certified by AWS to implement solutions on your behalf. So what does this mean for you? Well, it might be that you have a workload that you want to migrate. It might be that you have a particular prototype that you want to trial out, but you don't have the skill set. That's where partners come in. Now, you can be able to reach out to the partner network and they will be able to do the work on your behalf, right? Now, this will give you time to, 1, you can upskill your teams while the partners are doing the implementation. 2, you can still be able to accelerate your go-to-market strategy because the partners will be doing the implementation for you whilst your teams are actually being trained, right? So where is all of this running, right? So we have what we call the AWS Global Infrastructure. So I like to call it the AWS Global Footprint, where we have our infrastructure placed. So today we have 37 regions and about 117 availability zones. Now, in simple terms, a region is where we have our physical infrastructure running. We'll have a cluster of data centers, all running in different floodplains, all running in different power grids. And this will help you if you want to architect for high availability, if you want to architect for disaster recovery, the infrastructure is built to be able to handle that. Right, a very important thing now around the infrastructure is that it's all interconnected to each other using the AWS backbone network. What does this mean? Well, if it happens that you have maybe a workload or you have something that you've created, a prototype, or it could be an application that you've created and you'd like to deploy it outside of Rwanda, you can be able to make use of the global footprint as a way to plan on how you can expand your resources and how you can make your applications to be available even outside of the country, right? Second to that, we also have services that are built for purpose where, for example, if you have restrictions around data residency, we can have what we call an AWS outpost, which can be placed in your data center, and you can be able to have some of the core compute resources that you'll be able to run. In fact, one of our partners who's here today is also helping in having to work on the implementation of AWS outputs, and that's Suntech. Right, the AWS cloud is basically built to support virtually any cloud workload. Right, now this slide, I would like for you to use it as basically a blueprint on how you will navigate the services that are available on AWS. Right, so you can break it down, for example, under security and compliance. When you go through the AWS console, under the security and compliance, we'll list all of the services that fall in that spectrum. And we'll also give you a description of what it is and what the service actually does. So similar applies if you maybe want to do some analytics on AWS. So in the AWS console, you go under analytics and then you'll be able to see the offerings that are available. And today, we have over 800 plus type of compute instances. So look at these as basically virtual servers, which are purpose-built for quite a number of different use cases, your machine learning, to running your compute workloads, and so forth. Another question you might ask yourself is, well, Sia, there's a lot of information that you've just shared. There's a lot of services that you've just mentioned. How do I even begin, right? So what we have done is we've built this framework called the Cloud Foundation Framework. Now, the Cloud Foundation Framework is a very important thing, and this is a discussion I have a lot with my customers to say, how are we making sure that we're managing our cloud environment properly? How are we making sure that we're implementing governance controls, right? The Cloud Foundation Framework is something that can help you on how you can guide your build on the AWS environment. And this is information, by the way, that's available on public in our AWS documentations, which you can be able to read through, and you can be able to kind of like benchmark it against your application or your workloads. Now, very importantly, how do you know that you're doing the right thing, right? We have a set of best practices that we've built from the AWS platform, which you can basically use to evaluate your system across the 6 different pillars that we have here. We've actually even built a tool called the Well-Architected Framework tool, which is available on the AWS console at no cost, and you can be able to go through the list of questionnaires that we have in that tool. And what it does is it basically evaluates your system and get to check if you're following the best practices. And if you don't follow the best practices, we do give you some recommendations on what you can be able to do to better make sure that you're running your systems in a more optimized manner and also in an efficient way. So, having all of that information in mind, how do we then take advantage of AWS and make sure that we're using it to, better improve our systems, to better make sure that we have a go-to strategy in our organization, and also make sure that we unlock innovation? Well, how you can do that is also quoting something Dr. Werner mentioned earlier on, that we need to be building evolving systems. And what will help us to actually unlock building those evolving systems is to actually modernize our applications. Yes, you might be doing a lift and shift today and running your workloads on AWS, but modernizing those workloads is a very important thing to put into consideration, because the key thing really, we need to build these evolving systems that are going to make sure that you always have a niche advantage when it comes to running your workloads. And really, modernization will help you in a number of different things, right? If you look here on the slide, this is a common trend that we'll typically see from our customers, where you will do a lift and shift, run your application as is on AWS, but we don't want you to stop there, right? There's still quite a number of different offerings that you can look into doing, and where you can modernize your applications even further. The most important thing is you want to get to a state where you lower your total cost of ownership. What will this do? Well, for one, you might have more budget in your organization, because the way in which the infrastructure is running, you will build event-driven type of systems, for example, where compute resources are only spin up when they're needed, right? And that will give your teams enough time to start working on innovative ideas. And hence, it's very important to look into modernizing your applications. Then the question is, when we talk about modernization, how do we know? Like, how do we start? what's going to guide us? Well, the good thing is we have these modernization pathways, right? And all of these will actually differ, right, depending on your use case and what you're trying to achieve. But the most important thing about this modernization pathways, this is what will help you to really unlock that space of where you can continuously experiment and continuously optimize your environments, following any of the modernization pathway that best fits your workload. And you might be asking yourself a question, how do I know which one to use? Well, for one, you can leverage your AWS account team that you have. This could be either via the solutions architect that you have in your account. If not, I will be sharing my email, and then we can start a discussion to just try and find out what are you trying to do in the cloud and how can we best help you and your organization. So I just want to showcase an example of how you can go about to achieve this modernization pathway. Give an example of this Java WebSphere monolithic application. Now, you may be coming to me as your solutions architect and say, Sia, how can we make sure that we get the best value of this monolith application? And then we can kickstart, modernizing it by following any of the steps that are shown here in terms of the pathways. For example, this is a monolith. We can look into moving it into containers. Again, this is not a definitive list, right? This is just giving you an example of how you can go about to kickstart these conversations. The good thing is we even have services that are pre-built on AWS that can assist you when it comes to kickstarting these modernization projects. What about databases? Modernization also does kick in there, and I'll talk about databases just in a few bit. But another very important element is around having to move into modern DevOps. Now, a very important thing is how do we quickly deploy our resources? We've built the prototype, we've built the application, we're happy about it. How do we quickly make it go to market, right? We do have some of the CI/CD pipelines and AWS services that can be able to help you achieve that type of innovation, right? And you can use that as part of the modernization pathways around the DevOps space. What about your data? So as I mentioned earlier on, modernization is not only limited to your applications, but it does apply to your data as well. We have a concept on AWS called a managed database, right, or managed services. What this means actually is you basically let AWS do the undifferentiated heavy lifting. And if I break it down even further, if you look at having to manage a database server, you're probably responsible to do the racking of the server, buying the server, patching the server, and there's quite a number of different steps that you have to go through before actually dealing with the data that's running on the database. So what you can do with the managed services or managed databases, AWS handles that undifferentiated heavy lifting. You as the customer, you focus on the data, right? You focus on having to optimize your queries on your database. And that will help you to unlock that potential when it comes to running your database or your data type of workloads. And it doesn't only stop into databases. For example, you look at services like the Amazon Kinesis data streams. How can you be able to pull real-time insights, be able to make decisions on data that is currently happening on demand, right? We have services that are pre-built that can help you to unlock that potential in your organization. And hence having to modernize your data workloads will help you to put you out there and will help you to actually go to market even more quickly. Now this is a very interesting one for me. Firstly, maybe it may expose my age, but the second one, I think we all do have challenges when it comes to running mainframe workloads. We have organizations who have these mainframes, and I won't lie, I've seen them, they're working very well. But I'm sure all of the leaders here today, in your organization, there is always that question that says, if this thing will break, what will I do? Like, what measures am I putting in place for my mainframe application? How can I make sure that if anything happens and it's an issue, I do have a plan B, right? I think it's very important to talk about that today because we all understand there are organizations that are still running these mainframes. But what I want to make mention of today is that we actually have teams on AWS that can help you to do mainframe modernization. And they will take you through all of these 8 different patterns. These are the most common ones on how you can go about to modernize your mainframe. And I think it's very important to take note of this and also put it in your strategy to say, look, am I making any plan B for my mainframes? And if so, how can I kickstart that? We do have that capability on AWS, and that's something you can look into achieving. And if we understand, there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to mainframes. They're all built, in different languages, your COBOLs. But the most important thing is we have experience. We have customer use cases. We have customer references of how we've done and achieved this type of work. In fact, one of my colleagues will talk about how you can be able to use generative AI as a modernization pathway for some of the mainframe applications. I don't want to spoil that for him. But I think this is what will add more value, right? Like, why am I pushing for modernization? Why am I mentioning this today? Well, the key thing is, to be honest, with modernizing your applications, you're not only saving on cost, but the time on which you will have to deploy new resources, the time on which your staff will have to work on new ideas will be increased. In fact, a very interesting one is the stats that is being shown here. This was done by the Hackett Group. I think the key one is around the infrastructure cost. So if you think about it, they've actually been able to optimize their cost twice. Because the first one, when you do the lift and shift, you're already optimizing your cost on AWS because you are lowering your total cost of ownership. But you don't only stop there. You then modernize your applications to run maybe event-driven architectures, which will help boost your costs even further. Again, the agility will increase, as I mentioned, because you have now more room to test, you have more room to run the experiments and get to really test out your projects. And a very key thing to note is that modernization is actually a journey, right? This is not a task we're going to kickstart today, and maybe by Friday we're done or by next week. And I think it's important to make mention of that. As a leader as well, you understand that when your team's giving these ideas on how we can go about to modernize your applications, it will take a bit of time. It will be an iterative process. And the moment we know about that very early on, it gives us enough time to plan and get resources and make sure we kickstart this modernization project. So how do we actually do this? What tools do we have to help you, kickstart this modernization project? So the first one is the migration evaluator. I think this one is tailored for more of your senior leaders, right? Where we can help you build a business case to showcase that if you were to either run this workload on AWS, this is what the commercials will look like. This is your projected forecast in the next year or two, right? This is a statement or a report that we actually build for you using the details or some of your inventory, right? And I think this is very important because this is what your leaders will be looking to, especially if they want to have budgets being set up for a particular project. So the same migration evaluator does happen when it comes to doing your modernization projects. We can actually help you to create this business case. It doesn't only stop there. We actually even have teams that are dedicated, to focus more on the commercial side of things, the AWS Cloud Economics. These are some of the offerings that you can get out by having to run on AWS. Again, these are teams that can help you to build executive summary reports. They can help you to build cash flow summary reports. And these are reports I believe each and every organization will have to look to, especially if they're looking into deploying a system or looking into running a specific workload. And again, this is material that is available to you and we can assist you in that journey. Then more on the technical side, there are actually proven patterns on how we can kickstart these modernization projects. And again, it will differ, as I mentioned earlier on. There's not a definitive list. It will differ depending on your workload and how you can go about to kickstart it. But these are proven patterns. We have customer references as well. And also, as I mentioned, you can leverage your AWS resources in your account or the AWS partner network to really kickstart this project and also help you to choose which particular pattern you can look into adopting when it comes to modernizing your projects. So, my ask today is, when you are sitting in your organization building your strategy on how you're going to run your workloads on AWS, these are some of the things you need to look into on how you can go about to run your workloads, optimize them, and also help to get to build those evolving architectures. Like I said, the key thing is having that executive buy-in. There are tools that are available on AWS that can assist you to build those business cases. And then the second one, I'd say, really having to identify the workload that is being whitelisted to do a modernization project. And we can kickstart POCs. I think having to run demos is something that would really show the value of what does this mean in my organization. So how do I kickstart this? Well, there are resources that are available for you that you can use, that are available publicly. One, we have the AWS workshops. These are workshops with step-by-step instructions which you can run in a safe environment. And within these workshops, in fact, I was playing with one, I think a week back, on how you can go about to modernize a monolith application, moving it to containers. The workshop literally took me step by step on how I can go about to achieve this. And this is resources that are available to you. Secondly, it's the AWS Skills Builder. So these are content, it's either videos or a classroom type of setup, but more on the content side of things, there are actually free videos and free learning materials that you can actually make use of. And it's not only going to limit you around modernization, but also having to understand the AWS footprint, understand how to interact with the AWS services, and most importantly, also how you can go about to be certified on AWS. That's information you can be able to get out from the AWS Skills Builder. With that, I'd like to thank you all for joining us here today. This is my email address. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn if there is something that is of interest you'd like to really, further discuss. Secondly, when we're having the networking session, I'll be more than happy, to bounce some ideas in case you have one or if you have any questions for me. Thank you very much.